The fundamentals are really the key. There's a lot of novel strategies and things that people can learn a lot from as far as like things to change, new things to implement, how to optimize their nutrition intake with proper vitamins and minerals and all these things. But the crux is like getting people to just take action and execute consistently on what they already know they need to do. Like most people, Jake, already know, hey, I shouldn't stay up till 2 a.m. watching Netflix. I should probably go to bed and get some rest. Probably shouldn't go eat fast food. Probably should pick up some whole foods at home. They're aware on a fundamental level, like probably shouldn't be doing this. I know this is bad for my health, but you know what, dude? They do it anyways. I know there's a lot of middle America that maybe not as in tune with this stuff, but the vast majority of people with social media and the internet and access to information generally know directionally what to do. The thing is, they don't do it. They don't do what they already know.
I'm sitting here with my man, Ryan Kennedy. What's going on, Ryan?
Appreciate you having me, Jake. Stoked to dive in with you, bro.
Thanks for jumping on. So Ryan is a functional medicine practitioner and board certified clinical nutritionist who I've had the pleasure to personally work with over the past year and just had phenomenal results. So excited to dive in today with Ryan, talk all things health, nootropics, maybe dabble in some real estate and talk some business as well. So Ryan, I guess to kick things off, I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about how you got into the health space. Tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Really a pain to purpose journey, dude. When I was 14, so this is going back quite a few years now, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And at the time, being a young guy, like I didn't really quite understand the full scope of like what that entailed, but I just knew like, oh, this isn't good. And I remember her going through the conventional treatment options. So working with an oncologist, chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, standard of care in the medical system. And I remember her like just getting so much worse over this time, which, obviously these treatments are poison to your body in a lot of ways and really can have a lot of gnarly side effects. Her physicians at the time told her what you eat doesn't matter. No vitamins or herbs or natural therapies are going to help you. Like your only option is to take these chemotherapy drugs and hope for the best. And it was really because of that misinformation, man. She passed 2 years later, back in 2010. And it wasn't just the misinformation she received during treatment. It was also the misinformation she and millions of other people received for decades leading up to that point. Because this was, throughout the process before she got sick, this was like pre-social media days, man. So the only real information you got, unless you were a total like bookworm, was on the television. And you'd get all these people talking about mainstream nutrition recommendations to swap out butter with margarine, to eat lots of whole grains, to minimize animal foods, to do all the things that we look back on now and we're like, dude, these are horrible, even though they're still the same government guidelines to this day. And that's a really big result in my eyes, looking back on the whole scope of like what we ate growing up and how we lived. Is she was just trying to do her best and listening to the advice she was given, just like most people. And so that was a real turning point in my eyes, Jake, where I realized like watching my mom go through this and pass at a young age at 54, like, dude, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And so it was really a wake up call for me to understand that like when my mom was fighting cancer, she didn't care about what car she was driving or any material possessions or any of that stuff. It was like, really what brings me back to one of my favorite proverbs. Someone with their health has 1,000 dreams. Someone without it has just one. And so that got me started just thinking about this stuff from a young age. And at the time, I wasn't living the healthiest lifestyle, going into college. Like I was drinking a lot and partying a lot. And, I was active. I played sports and I was into fitness, but I wasn't exactly healthy. And I had a lot of my own issues, with digestive problems, skin issues, some depression and, ADD and all sorts of other things. And so I kind of set off on this quest just for personal knowledge. Like, dude, what should I be eating? How can I live a better life so I feel better, perform better, and don't die early from chronic disease like the vast majority of people in our society do these days? And so that was the real catalyst for me. And then that process kind of transformed. I, studied kinesiology in my undergrad, worked in physical therapy clinics and really helped people on the physical side of things, as far as biomechanics and injury rehab and working with stroke patients and all sorts of things to help people improve their physical health. But during that process, dude, working in a clinic, I realized like, man, people would come in for their 2 or 3 physical therapy sessions a week, but they weren't seeing that many results if they weren't prioritizing the other pillars of health, your sleep, your nutrition, your stress management, replenishing nutrient deficiencies, gut health, hormones, like this whole arena of other areas that directly impact your success or lack thereof with some of the physical stuff, like physical training. So that's when I went back to school, studied naturopathic and functional medicine in postgrad. And that brings me to where I'm today, where I get to consult with awesome guys like you and help people really dial in the A to Z of health and really take kind of a broad, holistic lens towards this whole picture and help people really get alignment on their actions and inputs to get to the desired outcome.
That's really good stuff, Ryan. There's so much to unpack there. I guess to pick apart one of the things you just mentioned, you talked a lot about, the importance of sleep and nutrition and just sunlight and all the basic things that seem to just be so lost in today's society. In working with, I know you work with a lot of, folks who are in real estate or own their own business. What are some super common mistakes you see people make or easy fixes that any person could just make tomorrow and see substantial results in, their well-being and their health, how they're feeling, their performance, all that stuff? Would be curious your take.
Yeah, people skip the fundamentals, man, because they are always sold like the sexy new thing, the cutting edge supplement or, regenerative therapy that they really don't need. It's really just like if you nail the fundamentals consistently, you're going to get results. And so the most common thing I see with a lot of entrepreneurs and investors I work with, Jake, at least before they come to work with me, is like people just have the wrong mindset. Everyone's got this hustle grind mindset of like, all right, I'm just going to sacrifice my health in the pursuit of financial success and to grow my business. And I'm going to burn the candle at both ends and I'll worry about the health stuff later. And usually it catches up to people, earlier these days than in the past, it seems like, for a multitude of reasons we could get into. And usually people just start to experience a lot of suboptimal function, as far as brain fog and fatigue and lack of focus and productivity and just really suffering from a number of things. Could be headaches, digestive issues, all sorts of problems. And that's usually when the light bulb goes off and they're like, man, it's like working an uphill battle every day when for every unit of time, I'm getting less unit of output because I'm just not feeling and performing my best. And so the biggest thing people could really focus on is the foundational elements. Sleep would be at the top of that list. You can't skip on sleep. And if you're not getting enough adequate, high quality rest at night, your performance is going to suffer. Dude, high quality sleep is like a performance enhancing drug. I mean, it is insane how much better you feel on a good night's rest versus without one, how much worse you perform. And it impacts your health short term and long term in terms of your blood sugar regulation, your mood, your focus. And then long term, if you're chronically sleep deprived, you increase your risk of virtually every chronic illness by such a significant degree. It's insane. So that's like number one, because it doesn't matter how perfect your nutrition is or how great your training plan is or how many supplements you're taking. If you're not sleeping enough, your health and your results are going to suffer. So that's usually where I'll start with people.
You mentioned that I got a horrible night's sleep last night. As I told you off to the side, my leg's been bothering me and slept terribly. And I noticed today, like, so much hungrier and just so much like I just want that, piece of fruit or that snack at times of the day that I'm usually not hungry. And I attribute that most likely to the poor night of sleep. Is that fair to say that I'm craving these foods and other things that I wouldn't otherwise be craving because I got a poor night's sleep?
100%, man. It massively increases food cravings, lack of sleep does. And it also messes up your blood sugar regulation. I mean, even after one night of poor sleep, your blood sugar regulation is that of like a diabetic. I mean, it gets significantly impaired with poor sleep quality. So there's obviously the duration of like, hey, I only slept 4 hours. Like clearly there's a problem, but there's also sleep quality. There's a lot of people that go to bed, they sleep through the night, at least to their knowledge. They wake up 8 hours later and they still feel like terrible. They still feel exhausted. They're not getting quality rest, where they're not getting into stage 3, stage 4 deep in REM cycles properly that can really create that restoration that we're looking for. So it's like there's two buckets to the equation. You have the duration and the quality, and they're both super important.
That's super interesting. And sleep, along with all the other things that you do to help dial in, your patients, or just, I know I've seen it personally with some of the things you've helped me with, whether it's sleep or some of the nootropics, which I'd like to jump into today, that, you've recommended, the nutrition, just eating the big dinner late at night versus eating too much early in the day, the walking treadmill desk, and all these things. just really helping me get in the zone and perform at my best in the business sense, right? Because having that energy, being super sharp, being able to work the longer hours is just so important to maximize your output and perform your best on the playing field, which is really what the business world is, right? So I know you work with, as I mentioned, a lot of really successful entrepreneurs and other professions, and would just be curious to hear a little bit more about maybe some success stories of a few folks you've helped, what they were struggling with, what you recommended to them, and the results they're seeing as an output of making some of these lifestyle changes.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, man, where a lot of people, when they're trying to grow their business or they're trying to enhance their progress in their career, whatever you do for work, everyone knows like, hey, getting like a business coach or getting someone to help me with strategy and tactics and vision, like that's really useful. And I agree. And I hire coaches for these things myself. But what most people don't take enough importance on is like the foundation, which is your health, your quality of life, how you feel, because you can get more done in 5 hours of focused work than most people do in 2 or 3 days. And that's something that's immeasurably valuable. Even if you have the right tactics and the right strategy in place, if you're not performing well, it's going to really cause you to suffer as far as your progress. So, as far as like some specific case studies, man, I got everything under the sun. I've helped people that have had everything from actual chronic diagnosed illnesses to people that have had mold exposure and suffering from daily migraines and can't put two sentences together. Their brain fog is so bad to completely reverse that and detoxify their body and get them back to tip top. I've helped people with severe gut issues that have had, IBS, IBD, all sorts of things where they're running to the bathroom 30, 40 times a day, like not exaggerating. And to restore their microbiome and to actually resolve that is life changing. Like it just totally changes the way you can live day to day when you're not having to like worry about this stuff. But the vast majority of people I work with, Jake, are guys like you who are just looking to get to the next level. You didn't come to me with like any major issues per se, but it's like, I want to be optimal. I want to really take things up to the next level. And that's really where I see a lot of people get a lot of benefit because you yourself included in this group, you have the ability to change a lot of lives and to make a lot of impact in the world. And by vibrating at a higher frequency and having more vitality day to day, like that really enables you on your mission to make your mark on the world. And so that's something I really enjoy about the demographic of people I work with is that it really does serve as an awesome catalyst to play a role in people's ability to really pursue their mission and their purpose and what they're really here to do.
Absolutely, Ryan. You've done a fantastic job and brought some really cutting edge stuff to the forefront for me. And just some really simple changes. Like I feel like not enough people even just get outside and get some sunshine or, walk during the day. Like when I first started
Yeah.
working with you, I was sitting for, 12 hours a day. Now just implementing the walking treadmill desk, just so much more energetic throughout the day. Getting that sunshine, really just dialing in the nutrition. I wasn't eating horribly before by any means. I was eating pretty healthy, but just making those little changes, and little things you suggested, like stopping eating 3-4 hours before bed, just giving your digestive system time to rest and how much more energetic you feel in the morning, and cutting out the vegetable oils. Like I thought it was healthy. I would say probably over 90% of people listening to this will say olive oil, cooking with olive oil is healthy. I thought that was healthy for my entire life. And you're like, no, that's a rancid oil. It's highly inflammatory. So I think even people who are really dialed in with their health and nutrition, I thought I was pretty dialed in before working with you. I think everyone has a lot to learn. There's things that you might think are healthy where you can really make improvements.
Yeah, well, just to clarify one thing on the olive oil, because your cooking fat's super important. And olive oil, like good quality olive oil, which is a small percentage of what's sold on grocery store shelves, because a lot of it is cut with shitty vegetable oils like soybean and canola. But if
Sure.
you get like a pure good quality extra virgin olive oil, it is a perfectly healthy oil. But because it's unsaturated, it's not very heat stable.
Mm.
So using it for high heat cooking, like in a stir fry, would actually damage and oxidize the fats. Whereas if you cook with a saturated fat, something that's solid at room temperature, like ghee would be a prime example of this, coconut oil, butter. These saturated fats are actually going to be much more tolerant to heat. So they aren't going to create the same lipid peroxides when you expose them to high temperatures. So it's not that like olive oil's, just to clarify, not terrible for people if you were to put it on a salad or in some pesto, assuming it's well sourced and good quality. But I wouldn't use it on like a high heat cooking scenario. The point, which is like, man, the fundamentals are really the key. And I would say like the crux of my work, Jake, like, yeah, there's a lot of novel strategies and things that people can learn a lot from as far as like things to change, new things to implement, how to optimize their, nutrition intake with proper vitamins and minerals and all these things. But really the crux is like getting people to just take action and execute consistently on what they already know they need to do. That's the biggest thing for most people. Like most people, Jake, already know, hey, I shouldn't stay up till 2 a.m. watching Netflix. I should probably go to bed and get some rest. Hey, I shouldn't have a bunch of ice cream at 10 p.m. Probably shouldn't go eat fast food. Probably should cook up some whole foods at home. Most people know this stuff. They don't eat French fries at McDonald's and are like, oh, this is fine for me. They're aware on a fundamental level, like, probably shouldn't be doing this. I know this is bad for my health. But you know what, dude? They do it anyways. And they have a hard time really executing on these fundamental principles that are pretty, I would even say, common knowledge. Like maybe not in like, I know there's a lot of middle America that maybe not as in tune with this stuff, but the vast majority of people with social media and the internet and access to information generally know directionally what to do. The thing is, they don't know, or they don't do it, right? They don't do what they already know. Why do you think that is? I'm curious to hear your opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think there's a quote out there. I'm going to butcher it, but it's something to the effect of if information was the answer, everyone would have, 6-pack abs, right? And it's not, because to your point, people know directionally what to do and they don't do it. It's a good question. I think a lot of people don't, it's hard, right? It feels overwhelming. If you're used to, eating that ice cream or being around, I think social norms are a big part of it, the people you surround yourself with, what they eat, just like a lot of things in life, right? The mindset that you go into it with, and just falling back on old habits, what's easy, what's tasty. And it feels like a big burden to make those changes and stick with it, especially if you're not seeing results overnight. That would be my guess, but would be curious to hear, as someone who deals with a lot of patients, the biggest roadblock of people not making these changes.
Yeah, you bring up some good points, and it is hard, debatably, for a lot of people. But everyone does hard shit, dude. Like taking care of a baby in the middle of the night when you're sleep deprived is hard, but people do it. Showing up to a job you hate every day is hard, but people do it. Like people do stuff that's difficult, but they don't necessarily eat well, and they don't necessarily take care of their health. And so I think that's only part of a small part of the problem. From my work, there's really like three reasons people struggle in this. And I've been dissecting this a lot because this is like the psychology of behavior change. Like this is really the missing link in this whole industry of health and wellness. Number one, they lack detailed guidance, detailed structure. It's one thing to say, hey, you should eat healthier. You should eat whole foods. You shouldn't, eat a bunch of fried nonsense. But it's another thing to say, all right, Jake, here's what you're having for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Here's what groceries to order on Instacart. Here's how to prep these meals in 5 minutes. Here's what options you could go do takeout if you don't have time to cook that are still healthy for you. Here's how to navigate a restaurant menu. Here's the detailed guidance of where you're going to work out, how long it's going to take, the exercise, the number of reps, the number of sets. Like that type of detailed guidance is much different than just this vague, like, hey, you should work out, dude. And you're like, well, yeah, but okay, that doesn't exactly get me to the finish line, Ryan. So that's one piece. And that's definitely something I help people with. Piece number two, especially in the near term, is accountability. That is big. Like humans lie to themselves with alarming regularity. And this goes beyond just health and wellness. This is for all sorts of shit in our lives. We say we're going to do one thing, we don't do it. And then life goes on and we rinse and repeat for decades, right? And then we just lose all confidence in ourselves and all of, we just don't take our word to ourselves with much weight because we know like, I said I was going to start tomorrow 800 times and I haven't started tomorrow. So how's it different from today until tomorrow? So having someone outside of yourself who can hold you accountable, who you respect, who you don't want to let down, where you got some skin in the game, like that makes a big difference for people, especially in the short term to make some of the transitionary jumps. The third and probably most important piece of this, dude, it's a mindset thing. People think that They don't follow through with their healthy habits because they're too busy or they're too tired or a million other excuses. But the real reason is their self-image gets in the way, their identity. They don't identify as a healthy, fit person. They don't have the right mindset. Because, dude, you say it's hard, but let me ask you, is it hard for you to like walk, 10,000 steps a day? No, you'd be like, dude, I walked 10,000 steps like in the first 2 hours today. Like that was so easy. Is it hard for you to like eat an early dinner? You'd be like, no, dude, I don't want to eat at 8 p.m. That sounds terrible. So it's clearly not a hard thing because you've built the identity, you've built the self-image, and you have the positive feedback loop to know like, dude, this is just who I am. This is just how I live. All this stuff makes my life so much better. I wouldn't have it any other way. And that shift inherently drives that sustainability and really drives those changes. Like if I asked you, Jake, I don't want you to work out for the next week. I want your leg thing to heal. Don't even think about walking this week. You'd be like, dude, you got to be kidding me. That's going to be so hard. That's going to be a nightmare, Ryan. I don't want to do that. So it's more about the identity shift than anything. And the best way I've discovered to resolve that, like, yeah, you could read self-help books and you could pick up, Atomic Habits and, read about all this stuff. But the real thing I've realized to shift this, holotropic breath work. This is a style of long form rhythmic breathing I developed, dude, that is the bee's knees. And the easiest way I can explain it for people is it's like a plant medicine ceremony with no drugs. Like it just gets you into this completely altered state of consciousness where you don't have your ego in the way. You don't have all this bullshit floating around in your head. And it really gets you straight to the source and really tapped in. And it enables you to shift these things internally in a completely new mindset, completely new light. And it is the single most powerful way I've seen shift someone in like literally less than 1 hour. One time, less than 1 hour. I've developed a new journey. You haven't even done this journey yet. I had launched this in December, so recently, like about a month and a half ago. And dude, I had people tell me like, man, I've been addicted to nicotine or smoking for years and years. I've never been able to quit. They come to my breath work and like that, haven't had nicotine since. And people that have like really bad, eating disorders and problems with emotional eating and binge eating come do this breath work and just flips a switch, man. It's insane. And so that's one of the tools that I utilize. There's a number of other tools and a lot of other resources and ways you could stack new habits. And to your point, change your environment, change the people you spend time with, prioritize new values in your life, look at, shift your perspective. Like there's a bunch of stuff you could do, but really like those are all top-down approaches. That's like talk therapy. That's like journaling, all great stuff. I'm not dismissing it. It's great. But you really need a bottoms-up approach. You need an experiential approach that's really going to have this visceral shift in your psychology and physiology and breath work without having to fly down to like South America and take a bunch of drugs with crazy people in the jungle is the most practical and efficient way I've ever discovered to create these types of transformations. And I get fired up about it, dude, because I'm going to change the world with this breath work.
I love that, Ryan, and haven't done the newest breath work that you've come out with. Excited to do it now, but have done the original one or the one that was out, I don't know, 6 to 12 months ago. And that was super powerful. I can attest to how powerful that was. Definitely enter an altered state and can see how that would be extremely powerful in the sense of being able to overcome some of these self-limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging behaviors, because I feel like that's what a lot of it is, right? It's self-sabotaging behaviors.
That's it, dude.
And getting over that. So that's extremely powerful. And I can really resonate with the identity component, because I feel like that's so important in not only health, wellness, but every part of life, right? Like once you get that positive feedback loop and it becomes a part of your identity, that's when the habit sticks forever, right? So getting, feeling good, seeing the results, that's when it's going to stick, versus if I'm sure when you feel like you're making someone, you're pulling at them to stick with these habits, they might make some quick results, lose 10 pounds, 15 pounds, but they never really wanted it. They didn't change their identity. And 2 months later, they just put the weight back on. So it's really important, I feel like, to really do the work inside, do that breath work, change the identity, and make the changes for the right reasons so it's sustainable.
100%, man. That's the biggest thing. Because if you look at the long-term success rates in the health and fitness industry of weight loss, specifically weight loss, like how many people lose weight and keep it off for 2+ years? I mean, it's like 3% of people. like 97% fail to keep the weight off after they've initially lost it. Like initially losing it is easy. You can do any diet, you can do any workout plan, you can do pretty much anything and lose weight initially. But how are you going to build that into a long-term lifestyle is really, that's the key. That's really the thing that most people should be chasing after and trying to figure out.
The other thing I feel like you do a good job with, which I'd be curious on your strategy with this, I've noticed just um, seeing you work with other patients or talk to a group. I know Ryan knows more than what he's saying here to this patient or this group of people. And I noticed that you pretty much spoon feed, correct me if I'm wrong, what people can handle at the time. You don't want to overwhelm them with all the information. You do a really good job of meeting people where they're at and giving them just enough information to take action and sensing how much info to give them without overwhelming them and having them shut down, because a confused mind doesn't make a decision, right? Would
That's
be
right.
curious where
Yeah.
you learned that skill set and kind of what your strategy is there.
Yeah, people paralyze themselves with the overwhelm. And having like a fire hose approach where I'm like, hey Jake, I'm going to send you this like 87-page protocol and I want you to go make these 200 changes tomorrow. You're going to be like, dude, Ryan, I was like, yeah, this is too much. Like most people are stressed out enough as it is. They don't need more stress in their lives. So I really have found that incremental approach to behavior change to be the most effective. And sometimes this is hard for people because they have this like switch in their mindset. They're like, all right, I'm ready. I want to do a complete 180. I want to go and just knock out everything all at once. And that just leads to burnout. And so really doing this in a methodical way is what I've seen in my own practice drive the most benefits. And that's what's hard, because when I do talk on stage or I do present to people, you want to over deliver. You want to give them all the goods. And I have to like hold myself back sometimes because it's hard to not come on here and be like, all right, Jake, let me go through like 5 dozen different tactics people could implement. Because what, to your point, people won't implement any of it. And so it's really about like prioritizing and finding out what is the low hanging fruit. What are the top 2 or 3 changes that you can make tomorrow that are going to drive the most benefit? Really move the needle, really provide you with that momentum. Because momentum is a powerful thing. Once you get that momentum going, you could sprinkle in more changes week in, week out, and really look back after 3, 4 months and be like, holy crap, dude, I've changed everything about my life. But it didn't feel like this shock to my system. It was done in a way that was so manageable that it integrated right into the rest of my life. It didn't overthrow my lifestyle. And that's a big thing I learned through years in practice, man, because I used to be a fire hose approach type of guy. I used to be like, yeah, dude, just come in for this one consult. I'll tell you everything you need to know. And then you don't need me anymore. Or you can come back and see me, in 6 months. I was like, why are these people not changing what I've given them all the goods? Like I'm giving them the playbook. Why are they not actually doing it? And it just comes back again to human psychology. It's very difficult for us to like absorb that much information and make that many changes simultaneously and then also sustain it. And so that is something that I think applies to all areas of life. Business is no different. You hired a business coach and they're like, all right, Jake, you're going to do this for your marketing. You're going to do this for your lead gen. You're going to do this for your sales process. And then you're going to work on your offer here. And then you're going to do this and you're going to do all this stuff tomorrow. You'd be like, dude, business is not for me. This is crazy. Like I can't manage all this stuff. But if they just gave you like 2 things to execute on this week and they're like, next week I'll give you 2 more, you'd be like, all right, this is for me. Like I could do this.
For sure. And I don't know if this is by design, but it also keeps people coming back, right? Like I know personally I was more apt to, sign on with a 1-year engagement with you because I'm like, oh, Ryan gave me, 3 really tangible pieces of advice that, I took action on them. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident. Oh, what else does he have in his goodie bag? And you kind of just like leaked out more and more really, really good tips as we went. And it's kind of like, all right, the kid coming back to the candy store for more candy, right? So I feel like I don't know if that was by design or not from a business perspective, but that was definitely an alternative benefit of your approach, I would say.
Well, dude, it actually works against me from a business perspective. I wish that I could just give people all the goods in one fell swoop and be done with it, because it just doesn't work. Like it's more of a matter
Yeah.
of what works for business is what gets people results. That's what works for business because that's what generates referrals. That's what generates raving fans. That's what generates organic traffic is by doing quality work that gets people to their desired outcome. And the reality is like, this goes for any service-based business. People are not paying you for time. They may think they are, but they're not. They're paying you for results. And so it comes back to the time delay. And if I could get you to make all these changes and feel as good as you feel now, Jake, like 9 months later in 9 minutes, dude, that is worth exponentially more money. If I
For
could
sure.
snap my fingers and get you results now, it's like, dude, you'd pay way more money than if I said, hey, Jake, I can get you these results, but it's going to take 6 months. We're going to have to talk for an hour every week. You're like, dude, there's a big opportunity cost. You're spending 25 hours with me just talking to me. Whereas if I could say, dude, I could just get you from point A to point B and it's going to take like 5 minutes twice, and within 2 weeks, you're going to be exactly where you want to be. That is a much more valuable offer. So I'm constantly trying to find ways to bring more efficiency to the process because that really, time is everything. That's our most valuable resource, time and health. So if you can deliver the desired outcome and get people the results that they're looking for in the least amount of time possible, even though it may seem to people that aren't really that in tune to this whole concept and are just looking at it like, oh my gosh, how much do you charge per hour? What is your cost per minute or whatever, analytics they want to run this through. They look at it rather like, hey, I'm paying for the result. And whether it takes Ryan 10 hours or 100 hours to deliver that result to me, the less time is actually the more valuable offer.
Totally, that makes sense. It's a really interesting paradigm shift. Definitely makes sense from a business perspective. And I'd be curious to actually pivot and dig in a little bit more from on the business stuff. So I think a lot of people would look at Ryan's a holistic health practitioner. What does he know about business? But knowing you personally, I know you're extremely savvy on a business front. You've built an extremely successful business really by yourself, with your now wife. I know Ashley helping you as well, but you've built a very, very successful business in an industry that is tough to do that in. I know a lot of people are in this industry and they're frankly not making great money. And it sounds like, you're doing extremely well. So would be curious how you built this thing from the ground up and built it into what it is today. And then would love to also hear what's coming up next for you.
Well, I appreciate that, dude. It's certainly been a journey. And you're right. A lot of people get into health just like I did from an inherent desire to help people get well. And that doesn't really equate exactly to marketing and sales, right? So like when I first got into this, Jake, I was not like a marketing guru. I'm still not, dude. I'm still a student of the game, figuring it out as I go. But a couple things that helped me early on. One is just the confidence. If you're not confident in the product you're selling or the service you're selling, you're never going to make it. Like you got to truly believe that I can help the person in front of me and I am the best chance this person has to get out of their situation and to get better. And whether you're selling an e-commerce product, like a physical product or a digital product, maybe you're selling a service, whatever it is that you're selling, you have to believe deep down, I can help this person and I can over deliver on the value, because otherwise sales is an uphill battle if you don't have a very strong conviction in what you do and why you do it. So that was a big thing for me starting out, was just developing that confidence. And it's not something you could just like read in a book. You got to put in the reps, dude. You got to have this like long trail of undeniable proof to say like, dude, I've helped hundreds of people just like you get these results. I know I could do it for you. Like I know without a shadow of a doubt, if you're committed to this process and you follow what I tell you, and I'm not going to tell you anything crazy either. It's not like I think you're a robot and you're just never going to, eat your favorite foods again or, live this unbelievably restricted lifestyle. But if you do what I ask you to do, even to 80%, I know you're going to get the outcome. And so that's been a big thing for me. I also invested in myself. So I realized, dude, like this is a hard thing. And I know you're really good at this, Jake. Like I got to commend you on this, but hiring business coaches, joining masterminds, getting around the right people, this stuff, you got to pay to play. And it's hard sometimes, especially when you're starting out and you're not flush with cash to, write a check for 10 grand or 20 grand and get into these circles and get help from people that are 10 steps or 20 steps ahead of you. But that's something that is an invaluable investment and it just accelerates your time curve. So rather than trying to dollar cost average into the S&P 500 or invest what small nest egg you have, it's like, dude, invest in yourself, especially if you're just starting out in the entrepreneurial game. You have no business investing in these long-term, slow-growing assets if you're not producing income. You got to invest in your income earning potential, number one, dude. So that was a big thing. Also, that was a big shift for me. The other things that really was the most transformative for my business, again, I use social media stuff and I get some like leads online that as far as just like organic content and putting out valuable stuff for people. And that's all fine and good. But the vast majority of my business from day one till now comes from referrals. And the best business advice that I've learned from doing, deliver the best quality service you possibly can to every single person. Because if you can make every person you work with a raving fan and they tell everyone they know about you and they refer you to other people, you're never going to have to do marketing. You don't really have to sell. If someone comes to me and they're like, listen, Jake, I know Jake, he's like a brother to me. He told me I have to work with you. He told me about all these results. They do the selling for you. So by the time they make their way to me, it's like an easy thing. Like, hey, this is what I offer. This is what I do. Are you interested? Yeah, cool. Let's do it. So the biggest thing is to focus on your customer. Focus on your customer is number one. And that really comes back to delivering the best quality product or service you can. And if you can make every customer extremely happy and make them feel like this is one of the best investments and best decisions I ever made, was hiring this guy or buying this product or doing this thing with this person, you'll never have to worry about, marketing or paid ads or any of that stuff. Because to this day, I don't do that much of that, dude. It's all like referral based. And so that's the other thing that's been really helpful for me. And for my industry, like there's a common phenomenon for people I've noticed, and I went through this myself with entrepreneurs, where you're like constantly in this information gathering phase. Where like, I need to learn more. I don't know enough. I need to become more of a subject matter expert before I can do this or that, or before I could start this business. And in my industry, you do have to know your shit. I can't be giving people bad advice. That totally like damage my reputation and go against everything I just said. But at the same token, you only have to be really 10% ahead of your customers. Like you don't have to know it all. And knowing it all is a fool's errand, because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. Like that's just the nature of how this world works. And the best way you learn is through experience, just doing the damn thing and getting those reps in. And for me, that's clinical experience. Like I could read books all day. I could listen to podcasts and I could watch YouTube videos. I could go to seminars and conferences and listen from the best of the best. But the real valuable insights I've gained through my journey, man, has been through clinical experience in the trenches, talking to real people with real lives in real situations and seeing what works in the real world. And you can't read that shit in a book, dude. You could read about all the scientific studies. You can go on PubMed. You can do all that. But like at the end of the day, you got to understand, like people are humans. They're not robots. So like just because this stuff works on paper doesn't mean it's going to work in practice. And that's been the biggest thing that I've gotten a lot of value from, is just the experience of going through this. And I'm just getting started, man. I got a long road ahead of me. So as far as like where I'm going now with the business, couple areas, dude. So one is I'm really trying to scale the impact I'm making. So I have some group coaching programs and courses and books and things that are, able to reach a larger volume of people, but I can only work with so many patients myself. And so I brought on another practitioner I'm really excited about, who's helped me on the business stuff and also going to be seeing patients. So it's expanding my capacity, because I was running into some capacity bottlenecks as far as how many people I can work with without working every waking hour of the day. And so while still maintaining my priorities and practicing what I preach on the health front and, taking time off, it really comes back to hiring people that are passionate about this stuff and can also, serve in the bigger mission and the bigger vision. So that's the big thing I'm doing on the functional medicine side, is really growing out a practitioner training program and hiring on other clinicians and getting to a place where I have a larger capacity for new patients. And then the other area I'm really growing, dude, is the breath work. That breath work, I'm not joking when I say that's going to change the world. That is really, I think, has the most potential for impact, growth, and scale of anything I'm doing. And I'm really excited because that is one where I have been perfecting the product for the last 5 years. I've been just focusing on creating the best breathwork experience with the right music, the right guidance, the right, saying the right things at the right times to make the right mindset shifts, and, working with this audio engineer on the specific binaural beats that open up the different frequencies in your brain waves, and using 9D music and all these different things. It's totally next level shit from the breathworks you've even done 6+ months ago. And I've gotten it to a point where I feel like it's always going to improve, but man, I think I've got a product that's different than anything else in the market. And now it's just about putting the marketing and the growth behind that.
Totally. And I remember you hyping me up about that new breath work that was coming out even 6 months ago. So I'm excited to give it a try. So much good stuff to unpack there, Ryan. I couldn't agree more with, in business, in life, whether it's, your mindset or whatever it might be. I've caught myself personally just in information gathering stage. And I feel like you have to educate yourself to the point where you're not just diving in without zero information, right? But I feel like the majority of people, and it's very hard not to do this, educate yourself. You realize, to your point, it's like a self-fulfilling loop. It's an endless loop, rather. You realize how little you know, and then you want more info and more info and more info. And then you realize after 6 months, you're like, I haven't taken any action because you just
Yep.
keep trying to educate yourself. And it's just so important. You get the baseline of knowledge, but then you jump in, you take action, and you learn so much more about just actually getting on the field and playing, right? Versus like learning about how to play. So much faster. Then you go back to the education after you get some reps in and can it makes more sense, right? So I feel like just taking action in everything in life is so important and so understated. And I also wanted to touch on the importance of masterminds. I think it's the number one thing that people can do to expedite their learning curve. Surround yourself with the people that you want to be, right? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, is really what it comes down to. And learning from the best, surrounding yourself with people who have an abundance mindset, it's going to just make you grow so much faster. So you're either going to pay for the mastermind or you're going to pay through the school of hard knocks in life. And I'd rather just pay for the mastermind and expedite my learnings and run that much faster. So I think that was a really good point you brought up as well.
Yeah, man, it's hard to see our blind spots. And having, we're both part of a group called GoBundance. And one of the things with GoBundance that I feel it's brought to me is just having like this personal board of advisors, people that are in different industries, different age levels, different seasons of life, that have different experience levels, most of which are well beyond, ours, because we're a lot younger than the average person in GoBundance. But having them take an inside look at everything you're doing and what you're working on and your vision, and just having them to help you avoid pitfalls and see blind spots and really identify areas where you're playing small, or areas that you shouldn't be spending much time on, that you're wasting time, or areas that you're limiting yourself, with some back to some of the limiting beliefs and self-sabotage that we put ourselves through. It can look a number of ways. It doesn't always have to be like I'm binging on, McFlurries at 2 a.m. It could also be like, well, I'm not hiring the right people or investing in my business in the way I should be. There's a lot of ways that we can limit ourselves. And so that's something that I think is awesome.
Totally. And I think I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan. I saw, you joined GoBundance during that time, and you just made a pretty substantial business decision to onboard a new practitioner. And it sounds like, you're going to grow that out even more, which was something that when we originally talked, wasn't in the cards. So it sounds like, surrounding yourself with these different, I guess, viewpoints in GoBundance helped you kind of shift that perspective into, oh, this is actually a net positive for me and will be a net positive for my clients. I'll be able to reach more people. I'll be able to grow the business. And seeing that perspective change was really powerful through the group.
Yeah, that outside counsel, man, it's huge. It's huge in helping you shift your perspective and see things from a different angle.
Totally. And Ryan, you own some real estate as well. I know you've been active in kind of selling some of your real estate, waiting for this potential crash. Some good prices here. So I know you've liquidated a lot of your assets, but I know you've been an active real estate investor as well, in addition to the business. I know you've been doing that for a couple reasons. For, the cash flow, but also the tax benefits, and kind of leveraging that real estate professional status to offset some of your active income, with Ashley managing the properties. So would be curious to hear a little bit more about how you got into real estate, what your goals are around that, if you plan on investing actively going forward, some more passive investments. Would love to hear about your real estate journey as well.
Dude, yeah, I got into real estate way back in the day, actually. So when I was like 19, I was like finishing up my freshman year of college, and I was like, man, I got to figure out how to make some money so I don't dig myself into debt here going through school. And I saw friends working at like Subway or Big Five or whatever. I'm like, yeah, $8 an hour is not going to get me to where I want to go. That's not the path. So there's two things I did, Jake. First thing I did was I was like, oh, I'm into fitness, and, I'm studying health and kinesiology. Like, I'll start personal training. $50 an hour personal training sessions sound a lot better than $8 an hour making sandwiches. So I got my personal training certification, started working and running a private training studio, and that was great. But then as I'm doing that, I'm also realizing like, well, shit, man, $50 an hour training sessions, while better than most of my peers, is also not really going to get me very significant quantities of money, especially when I'm going to school and I can't work, 12 hours a day. So one of my clients at the time at the gym was in real estate. And she's like, dude, you should totally get into real estate. Like, you got a great personality, you know, just have to take a test. You could be a real estate agent in like a month. I was like, well, geez, $10,000 commissions sound a lot better than $50 an hour personal training session. So way back in like, we're going back to like 2012, 2013, I got licensed as an agent, started working with Keller Williams at an office here in Hillcrest. And dude, I learned a ton. And I did like 6 figures in gross commission income my first year, and like had like pretty good start as far as like a 19-year-old dude with no experience. I was just like, you know, this is great. Like this is some pretty good income. And I had like these 2 good verticals where like I was getting leads from my personal training clients on the real estate side and leads from my real estate clients on the personal training side. So it was like kind of 2 businesses feeding each other while I was an undergrad. You know, I learned a lot of really good lessons. And one of the things that early on, I had this coach at Keller Williams. He was like a team leader, manager type dude. And he saw me as like young hustler, you know, hustling kid getting after it. And he's like, listen, Ryan, selling real estate is great. You know, commissions are great. You got to pay the bills. But dude, you want to be buying real estate. And Jake, this was like 2013, 2014. Like this was a great time to be buying real estate in San Diego. And so I'm like, man, this makes sense. Like, yeah, I'd love all the people I met, dude, at that point that were financially successful were in real estate. And they weren't like super intelligent dudes, like not to put them down or anything. Like clearly they're street smart because they built up like massive wealth, but it wasn't like some tech billionaire that started this like crazy SaaS company that, you know, you hear stories of. It was just like regular dudes that just like bought properties and rented them out and bought more and rented them out. And before you know it, they've got like 8-figure net worths and they're living large on their passive income. I was like, man, this is definitely sounds like a good path for me. Being in the industry and looking on the MLS every day, like I was able to get, you know, pretty good understanding of the market and pricing and, you know, good opportunities and some decent lead flow. And so in 2015, I had saved up enough money to buy my first property, and it was 3 single-family homes on one parcel, right adjacent market to North Park, called Cherokee Point, which at the time was a little bit rough. It was like exactly where you want to be, like a C-class neighborhood, right on the border of like a B+, A- neighborhood. Gentrification was spreading that way. And you could just tell like all the people were getting priced out of this more expensive market and they're just flowing a little bit east, which was prime time Cherokee Point, dude. So I bought this property. I lived in one of the houses. I rented out the other 2. And I just, you know, fixed them up. And, you know, during this time, I was getting into property management, part of the real estate gig. I had someone hand over a bunch of properties for me to manage that was kind of getting out of the game. And so it was prime opportunity for me to start learning about this stuff and building up a Rolodex. So I fixed up these properties and just did it on the cheap, dude. You know, doing a lot of stuff like subbing everything out myself, hiring guys at Home Depot, like everything you would imagine a guy with like not a ton of income would do to get these things up to speed and up to market rents. And it, dude, great acquisition, great property. I still own it to this day. It's like tripled in value, and it's an awesome asset I'm going to hold probably forever, you know, especially with the loan terms I got locked in 2021. So that was like my first acquisition in real estate. And then from there, you know, during this time, I realized like, hey, the real estate agent stuff is cool, but like, it's not for me. Like I didn't love the ups and downs. And I had a couple clients like back to back where I was like working with for 6+ months and then just decided, oh, actually, we're not going to buy. And I was like, oh, fuck this, dude. I'm not into the, and that's part of the game, dude. Like that's what you got to understand in that industry. And I was just not passionate about it. I saw it as a great way to make a few bucks, but I was not into it the way I was the health and wellness stuff. And so during that time, like I went back to school, like I talked about in the health stuff. And then, but I kept on like investing. So I was like, yeah, real estate is where it's at. And so bought a 4-unit property, kind of did a slow motion fix and flip where there's this property that had like below 50% market rents. And so just one by one, just kind of rehabbed the units and re-rented them at market rates and got the NOI way up and resold that after about 18 months, you know, just kind of worked through the process, picked up another house in 2020. And so it was definitely like kind of a slow roll. Cause back then, dude, I didn't know all the things I know now. I didn't know about like private lenders and hard money loans. I was like, man, if I don't save up 20% down payment and qualify for like this conventional Fannie Freddie loan, I can't buy real estate. And so I was definitely, in hindsight, I could have gone a lot faster, but I built up a really solid portfolio of like quality properties in really good areas that I'm really happy about. And I hit a home run on the way. I got this like 0% seller financing deal on this house that was a neighbor's that, you know, sold it to me for nothing down and 0% interest. And it was just like a total freaking home run, dude. But during that time, as the market just went on a tear in like 2021 and 2022, interest rates went up. I was like, man, I can't really find anything to buy here. Meanwhile, my health business became much more of a priority because things were really going crazy there too. And so as of like the last, call it 2 years, really the last 18 months, I've really been more into the passive investing, which is what GoBundance has really turned me on to. Really, really good operators that are, an expert in this. That's their zone of genius. Guys just like you, Jake, where it's like, dude, I'm not in the trenches working on real estate deals 40 hours a week. And I'd much rather put my money with you, a guy who is doing that knows this stuff like the back of his hands, that this is all you do. This is your real area of genius, so that I could focus on my area of genius, which is my health business. And so that's really what I've done over the last 18 months. Whether or not I'll get into active investing again is unknown. I guess it just depends what the market does, but I've been doing more JVs and LP deals, opportunities for funds with operators of guys I work with who I really trust, who have great track records, bringing good deals to the table that I couldn't find nor operate nor have the time or bandwidth to deal with. And that's really been that's the foreseeable future for me, man, is holding on to my existing stuff. I did sell 2 properties last year, my own portfolio. And not that I necessarily think there's an impending doom coming. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't think anyone really knows. But they're just properties that weren't giving a good return on equity. They were cash flow positive, very positive, but with the amount of equity I had, so the amount of cash flow I was getting, that's something I think a lot of investors miss, is like, dude, if you got 500 grand of equity and you're making $1,500 or $2,000 a month in cash flow, that's not a good property to hold, because you could sell that, redeploy the money far more advantageously in a way that doesn't take up any of your time or mental space. And so that's just what I recognized from learning from guys like you that are really seasoned in this, and really being able to accelerate a lot of depreciation and get some more tax benefits to offset some of my business income. And so that's been the journey lately, dude, is really just kind of looking for passive deals and keeping an eye out. There's a guy, Mike Dorfo, that I work with that kind of gives me some guidance on this front too. Again, hiring people that are an expert in this arena to give me some quality soundboards and some good guidance there. But yeah, it's been a good journey, man. I love real estate. It's still my favorite asset class. It's still the bulk of my portfolio. It's definitely something I'll continue to invest in for probably as long as I live.
That's awesome, Ryan. That's a great story and a great journey. It's interesting you mentioned the return on equity. I think it's something not enough people consider. I've had a number of discussions recently where people are like, "Oh, I'm locked in at 2.9% or 3%. I'm never touching that property. I'm never refinancing. I'm never selling." And I'm like, okay, I kind of get it. And then I start asking more questions like, hey, how much equity do you have in this property? I come to find out it's worth, 1.3 million. They have 700K of equity in the house. I'm like, I take out a piece of paper. I'm like, all right, you're cash flowing an extra $800 a month because of the low interest rate. Cool. But what if we were to redeploy the 700K into X, Y, and Z? And to your point, it could be a passive investment at like a 7% pref, and they're making way more money on that money. And I just see the light bulb go off in their head. But it's something not enough people do, is really look at their assets and see, like, could I deploy this money elsewhere? They get blinded by the interest rate, for instance. So
yeah, and I was in the same boat. I thought the same thing. And one of my patients is a big real estate guy, Brandon Turner, and he's the one that like challenged me on this. He's like, dude, your interest rate really doesn't matter. Once the property is stabilized, you really, whether your interest rate's 6%, 3%, 9%, he's like, you really want to look at how much net equity, like after your closing costs, after real estate commissions, after all that stuff, what is your net equity that you'll walk away with at the close of escrow? What's your tax burden on that? Well, what is going to be your net? And then what could you get in the market from a property that with a new acquisition, Jake, you could buy undervalued assets that are, beaten down, something I know you're really big on, add a bunch of value with a good rehab and CapEx, get that valuation like double, which I can't do on some of the properties I sold. They were already kind of maxed valued in terms of like what I could do to it. So it wasn't like I couldn't force appreciation like you can with a new acquisition. And I don't necessarily think the real estate market is going to crash 50%. And it might go down a little, it might go up a little. I don't know, but I definitely don't think it's going to go to the moon from here. I don't think it's going to go up 50% in the next 5 years either. So if we're just kind of ballparking a high likelihood, things will just kind of, stabilize, go up a couple percent, maybe go down a couple percent, but just kind of like hum along. And it's like, okay, well then if you can't force appreciation and things might appreciate a few percent a year, that's not a huge growth potential, even if it is in a good, strong market. So that was my thinking behind all this and factoring in all these things, which I feel really good about those decisions and those properties I let go. But then there's properties I still have where, like, between the debt pay down, the cash flow, the appreciation, you factor all that in, it's like, oh, this is actually an 8 or 9% return. And I have full control of the asset. Maybe I'm better off holding it and not selling it and deploying that into a syndication or a fund or something. So you just got to weigh all these different components. And I think a lot of people do get blinded by that interest rate. Like, oh, 2.9%. That's all I need to know. It's like, dude, no, there's a lot more to the equation.
And I think the biggest, another interesting thing you hit on here, Ryan, is you said, hey, if I knew what I knew now, I could have run a lot faster, but there's no way to gain the knowledge. Back to our discussion earlier, you wouldn't have known what you know now. It has all happened by taking the baby steps, by taking action and getting in the game. And you just threw your hat in the ring and you learned more and more each property you bought, and you stacked up this really solid portfolio. And now you're at a point where you really get it. But no book would have taught you that. It was all from taking action, buying the deals, learning, stacking the knowledge. And I feel like it's so important to anyone listening to just get in the game, take action, buy that first house, and always evaluate what's the next step. Don't get overwhelmed. Okay, reach out to your realtor, get on that their list on the MLS, evaluate the deal, put in the offer, buy the first house. It's just one step at a time, and those things will compound. And you'll look back and you'll say, wow, I built this really great portfolio. But I know too many people who get into an analysis paralysis. They just get stuck in the information gathering stage. They think themselves into a hole, and 5 years later, they still haven't bought a house. So it's the most important thing is taking action, be smart about it, but you got to get in the game.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, man. I think hindsight 2020 is kind of silly. And if I did run faster, maybe things would have imploded, or, things wouldn't have worked out as well. So you never really know.
So Ryan, to wrap things up, where can people find out more about you, or if they're interested in working with you, or learning more about the breath work, or any of the I guess groups that you're putting on? Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, everything's on my website, ryankennedyhealth.com. You can find the breath work. You can find more info on my private practice, all the other stuff I got going in the health space. And then I share stuff on Instagram, Ryan C. Kennedy, and all the places, all the social media places and YouTube and whatnot.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Ryan. It's a pleasure to chat with you as always and learn a little bit more about your journey. And yeah, sure everyone enjoyed listening to it. So thanks for the time.
Appreciate it, Jake.